I provided commentary for a state bill that was being pushed through Tennessee, and it's one of more than a dozen states are doing this exact same bill, the Recognizing Judea and Samaria Act. That clip went viral, my commentary, and so I have people reaching out to me from California, from DC, New York, that are like, "Oh, I saw you on the Tennessee Holler," but yeah, so for the commentary against that bill. So the bill, big picture, it's makes people makes anything that's published by the state or contracted by the state has to refer as the territory that is West Bank as Judea and Samaria. And so that's what that bill makes you do. So obviously there's so many different reasons why that's just inappropriate from just like a state law
Give
perspective.
me one or two.
Yeah. I mean, the states have nothing to do with foreign policy. I mean, that's straight up a duty and responsibility of the federal government, and the federal government specifically calls that territory West Bank. By Department of State acknowledgement. So we're essentially going against what's already established law for the way that that area is supposed to be recognized. And so there's taxpayer costs. There's obviously just the fact that it's a one-sided position in a complicated situation, politically complicated situation that impacts so many people that live in the state of Tennessee, right? Like me as an example, right? So it's an attempt at erasure of uh, an identity of people that either live there or are in the diaspora from there, and showing that the state cares more about like playing these side games and erasing identity than it does about actual state issues. And so just I can go on and on and on, but just a couple of reasons there.
Who pushed this forward in Tennessee? Let's get their name out there.
Yeah. So it came from a handful of the um, state legislators. On the Senate side, it was Senator Rose, who's a one of the older Republican senators. But it originated though. So it didn't actually originate in Tennessee. It came from this organization called ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. And so a lot of people don't realize this. Across the states, legislators hardly ever write their own bills. It almost always comes from organizations, think tanks of some kind, or some sort of lobbying group that's trying to push some sort of law for whatever their agenda is. And so legislators can only push so many bills because session lasts so long, and they have to choose their priorities. And a lot of times people do it for political reasons because they want to get reelected. They're trying to build up popularity among their constituency, or they essentially get a handshake agreement with an organization where it's like, okay, we'll make sure we help you with your next election with campaign donations. Don't say it directly, but you have to push this bill as part of your package of 10 bills you're pushing this session. Excuse me. And so it came from this group called ALEC. It's a conservative DC based think tank, and they push it to many different states. And so I did some research as part of the prep for the testimony for the hearing, for the Senate committee hearing, and figured out that the sourcing of Alec's standard bill, because you can actually go look up like all their agenda of bills. Like it's not like conspiracy; it's on their website. They say these are our agenda of bills we're pushing to the states this year. And you look at where it came from. It came from Christians United for Israel, which is one of the biggest pro-Israel organizations in the states. And Christians United for Israel took dozens of senators and legislators from the states over the last 5 years to tours in the West Bank, including Tennessee legislators, over the last several years. Really, post-COVID is when these tours happened that were associated with this bill. And part of that tour involved meeting the leaders of this organization based in the West Bank in one of the settlements in the north called the Judea Regional Council. And the leadership of the Judea Regional Council is all people that are associated with the Likud party. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Likud party, but the Likud party is effectively the equivalent of the hard right in Israel. Netanyahu is a member and was party leader for a while, the Likud. But he's still obviously the face of it. Ben Gvir, Smotrich, all these extremist people that we know about that have international arrest warrants against them, right? They are members of Likud. And so the whole goal of Likud, if you actually read their charter, the whole from the river to the sea concept, and people trying to say it's about erasing genocide against the Jewish people in Israel, it's actually in their charter in the opposite direction. And so it's the double standard there, obviously. But their goal is annexation and demographic control. So they're trying to balance those two factors. They want to make sure that they maintain a Jewish majority in the region, slowly displacing people, slowly acquiring area, and pushing people out of certain regions in the West Bank. And they want to slowly annex those regions and eventually, obviously, push out as many Palestinians as they can, so they can, while they're bringing in the Jewish presence from across the globe to keep that demographic majority and eventually annex the entire territory. So it's all in their, like I said, this is all in their website. It explains exactly what their objectives are, what their goals are. You can source it, figure out how this bill got into Tennessee law, and here we are having this conversation because of these very elaborate strategic moves by people that obviously have an agenda.
And the Likud party that's the party that just pushed through the acceptance of uh, executions, capital punishment uh, in Israel and their territories for Palestinians, but
That's
not
right.
for
Yeah.
Israelis or Jewish people.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Yeah, Palestinians can be executed now by death penalty and by hanging for being charged with terrorism. And in Palestine, terrorism, a kid can have a terrorism charge for
yeah,
throwing a rock in a tank. I spent a summer in Palestine when I was a kid at the village where my family was originally from, and every day you'd see tanks driving through the streets there. And I was a kid. I saw the picture of the kid throwing the rock in the tank. And actually, I was a kid in Palestine. I was going to pick up a rock and throw at a tank just to be cool, essentially. And I got stopped by one of my distant relatives. Said, "Don't do that. They will arrest you if you do that." But just to show you, like, small kid, I could have been arrested for terrorism, spent my whole life in Israeli prison just because I picked up a rock and threw it at a tank. And now the law justifies putting that kid to death by hanging because of that terrorism charge. And so that's just the life, the world that we live in. And it's like, who's asking for Israeli tanks to drive through Palestinian villages, right? It's like, why are we putting people in that situation in the first place? They see that every single day. They see the oppression. They feel the raids in their houses. Like, what? How are you going to respond if you're living in those situations? You're going to retaliate whatever way it means you have available to you. In a lot of cases, it's some kind of throwing rocks or whatever. Like that's a very common mechanism. These people are charged with terrorism for doing that.